So what's the big problem with wealth creation? How do people like us, who didn't inherit a boatload of money, who are investing and building wealth from our own blood, sweat and tears, how do we invest in a way that gives us remarkable results and become financially free before retirement age? I don't know about you, but I am sick of hearing from wealth gurus and experts who don't walk their own talk and prescribe strategies that are a one-size-fits-all approach. For self-made people like you and me, I'm here to tell you that you don't need to be superhuman or already wealthy to reach financial freedom earlier than 65. This is the Alternative Investing Podcast.
Hey guys, so awesome to have you tuning in again today. In this episode, what I actually want to do is really unpack in a detailed way why I am taking a group of clients to New York and why this experience will completely transform their future financial outcomes. It's been front and center of the mind for a little while now. I've been preparing this field trip to some degree that I've been putting together for the last probably 3-4 months. It was something I put out to my clients last year as a bit of a, how about we do this after the pain of lockdown? And everyone was like, yeah, let's do that. So we're doing it. We're actually heading to New York at the end of next month. And I was reflecting on the drive to work today about why it would be super valuable for you guys to understand my motivation around putting this event together and why I believe wholeheartedly that this event will completely transform not only their understanding of alternative investments and how they work, but it will take their confidence and ability to execute on deals to the next level. So the first question I want to kind of address is, well, why wouldn't I just keep running events just here in Australia? And don't get me wrong, I mean, I run events roughly each quarter. They are next level awesome. They're mastermind style, meaning, you know, there's a bit of presenting from me. I'm really, I guess, a catalyst for some deeper conversations about money and wealth that perhaps kind of either sit on the back burner or people are too embarrassed to talk about. And then we play games. We have keynote speakers, people who are experts in different alternative investing strategies. And essentially, it's an opportunity for people to rub shoulders with others who are on a similar journey, people who are really small investors all the way through to what I regard as pretty high net worth individuals doing some amazing things with their wealth. And as much as I love those events, I've recognized through my own experience that there's simply no substitute for face-to-face contact with deal makers, advisors who are in the trenches every day. So I thought it would be useful if I share a little bit about my own story. And I haven't really shared this before, but essentially when I discovered alternative investments back in 2008, moving into 2009, you know, I realized that we live in such a tiny pond here in Australia. And the truth of the matter is that it's a big world and there are some amazing opportunities that exist outside of our borders. And as the world moves to this global kind of community where travel is kind of second nature, commerce and trade is second nature, I'm kind of thinking back then, well, why wouldn't that extend to investing? And at that time, investing in foreign markets was really the playground of the ultra wealthy or corporates. And so, you know, really I was a bit of a small fish in a giant pond, if you like, trying to understand, well, you know, what are the opportunities that exist in other markets? And, you know, what made the tension or the challenge that I had at the time was I had small kids and my husband worked a pretty heavy workload. And I just was like, well, how am I going to make this work? But I kind of knew very early on that if I was organized and I made it easy for the family that, you know, I could have my cake and eat it too. And don't get me wrong, there was plenty of compromises, but, you know, they were sort of infrequent, if you like. And so I remember I would like cook meals for a week, stick them in a freezer. I would jump on a plane. I would fly overseas, predominantly in the end to the US. I would literally land on the tarmac and I would head to my first meeting, first, second, third, and I would start meetings early and finish really late at night. Because of the time difference, I'd be exhausted by kind of 9, 10 o'clock at night, and I would attempt to go to sleep. And unfortunately, I'd be kind of, woken with the time difference at about 1 a.m. And so I'd just get up and, essentially I would do that maybe 2-3 days in a row. Then I would get on a plane, fly home, and go back to being mother of small children. And I did that, several times a year, and it wasn't ideal. But what I learned from that experience was that what you could achieve in 2 or 3 days by actually getting boots on the ground, meeting people, having conversations, touching, smelling, seeing real deals, trying to understand the mechanics, the paperwork, the processes, getting a sense of who was the real deal and who wasn't. I couldn't have achieved that by simply having a Skype call or talking on the phone. Zoom didn't exist back then, but all of those options were fairly limited. And unfortunately, I think that it's very easy for people to pretend that they're this awesome human being when you've only got a sliver of time with them. It's much harder for them to sustain that facade when you're spending a reasonably long period of time with them. So I guess my journey has been probably not the smoothest. And when I think back, I have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours, boots on the ground, talking to people, getting cuts and bruises, leveling up. And really where I am right now is I still see that commitment to traveling and continuing to build relationships is super important. The network of relationships that I now have has not come about by accident. It's come about through grit and determination to build deep relationships with people who live really far away. And that's not easy. So what I would say is the reason that I'm taking this group of people over is because I want them to have a taste of the same thing. Now, my theme for this event is called Level Up. And my experience of traveling and meeting and breaking bread with people was exactly that. It was about how do I level up as an investor? And, it's a little bit like drinking from a hose, because you go from very theoretical knowledge to very practical knowledge, and you start to see the flaws in the way that you think, the way that you behave, the actions that you're taking. And let me just be really frank, I would often fly to the States, for example, because I was interested in alternative. But as you start to spend time with people who are just so at home with investing in general, your habits, thinking and ideas shift across the board. So I've been able to apply a lot of the thinking, strategy, learnings that I've gleaned from these people over the last 12, 14 years to every other aspect of my investing, and even to my life in general. So it's really something I cannot stress enough. And I know I talk about this ad hoc, but the value of developing a network, one that you can call on for support if things are not going well, one that you can call on when you have spare capital and you're looking for a killer deal, people who have their ears to the ground, who are in the trenches running these deals, who feel tremors well before everybody else. Getting those insights ahead of whatever the media spouts is completely immeasurable, invaluable. So that's kind of like my pre-frame to this particular episode of why am I taking my clients to New York. But let me kind of break that down into 3 just really solid keys. And the reason I'm sharing this with you guys on the podcast is I want you to, whether you're flying to New York or whether you're trying to kickstart your current investment portfolio, these principles are really, really important. The first principle is there is no substitute for a personal relationship. So when I say that, I know that the journey that my clients go on with me when we start working together it's very intimate, like we're sitting there dissecting their situation, their personal aspirations, what they currently have, looking for opportunities to optimize, looking at their stewardship, looking at their rules for selecting assets, and essentially building out a bit of a plan. And once they're at the point where they're concrete on, I understand the strategies, I understand my plan, now I want to execute, there's a kind of a smorgasbord or a buffet of opportunities, dozens of opportunities for them to choose from. Now, I'm very clear that I don't tell people what to invest in. Once they get to the starting gates and they're ready to do deals, they don't want my opinion. They're ready to pull the trigger on deals because they like the way that a certain trusted advisor speaks, or the way they run their deals, or their track record, or whatever it is. They fall in love with the strategy. And the way that people get to know who's who in the zoo is they consume content out of my membership site. They hear from them during live sessions. But what I stress to people is there's no substitute for building a personal relationship. And ultimately, when my clients are ready to do deals, I facilitate a personal introduction so that they can have a direct relationship with this person or with those people, so that over time, they are literally building a pipeline of A-grade deal flow that will be there for the rest of their lives. So when I say there's no substitute for a personal relationship, what I'm arguing for is there's levels. There's the level where they get to consume videos, pre-recorded videos of interviews that I've done with these guys and girls. I should say guys is a generic word. There's also opportunities to participate in live discussions where they get to ask questions. And then there's the next level above that, which is speaking to these guys one-on-one, predominantly through Zoom or other technology. And then there's the ultimate level, which is you spend time with someone, you get to know them, you get to know, like, and trust them. You get to ask them questions about who they are, what they believe in, their track record, their experiences. And there's just no substitute for that. And why I feel this New York trip is particularly important is that many of my clients have, for particularly this last couple of years during COVID, they've been starved of direct personal contact with these guys who supply deals and the Trusted Advisor Network. And so this is their opportunity to take it from being just a bit of a slightly sterile type experience to deeply intimate. And I have to say, my own experience, and if I think about my own success, the major point of inflection in my wealth journey came when I started to invest time in these face-to-face catch-ups. So super, super important point. The second thing that I really want to kind of indicate as a bit of a key is that when you spend time with people, you have an ability to have what I call sideways conversations. And certainly that happens at our mastermind events too. When you get to rub shoulders with people who are like-minded, who are on a similar journey to you, maybe at varying stages, you get to learn so much about how people think, how they behave, what life experiences have influenced their decision making, why two people with seemingly similar financial aspirations are at completely different points. And these sideways conversations allow you to go much, much deeper than interviews where, I put someone in the hot seat and just ask them a series of questions about, what's happening in the market. Tell me about that deal. How did it work? What does the opportunity look like? Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, which is really great. But the sideways conversations are much more intimate. They are much more personal. It's kind of like, oh, by the way, I've always wondered about blah. Or just really getting to understand what the value system of other investors looks like. I think we grow up in households and it's very, very common for us to adopt the attitudes, thinking, and I guess preferences from our parents, families, and friends. And that is not uncommon. And it's not really until probably well into adulthood that some people even think about starting to challenge that. And what these sideways conversations have kind of allowed me to do is to really question some of the money values that I've had, the wealth values that I've had, and reshape them and redefine who you want to be, who you are around money and wealth. And, I cannot stress this enough. Who I was as a teenager and even potentially in my 20s and who I am now in terms of my relationship to money is chalk and cheese. And so I truly believe is these sideways conversations can sometimes be so impactful that they can overcome a lifetime's worth of maybe poor or lazy or thinking that lacked mindfulness in a split second. So these sideways conversations should definitely not be underrated because they allow you to go way deeper and heal and transform habits and experiences that maybe you've been, stuck with or that have been ingrained over your life. The third and final kind of key that I want to share with you today is the value of seeing, feeling, and touching deals. I mentioned it a little while ago, and essentially from my experience, when you can get boots on the ground, walk around, see these deals, see these property deals, look at the paperwork, talk to the attorneys, talk to the accountants, it will completely change from being very theoretical to really concrete. And once I started to do that, what I was able to get, much better clarity on was what deals I would and would not do. Because there's definitely one side of the equation, which is how profitable does this deal look? And as we all know, it's very easy to manipulate the potential profitability of a deal on paper. But when I started to look and touch and see these deals for myself, I could actually start to put that together with the profitability piece and start to discern the difference between a good deal and a bad deal. And from an investor point of view, that is how you build safety. You build safety not by investing blindly because someone showed you a great pro forma of a very profitable deal, not because someone handed you a glossy brochure and said, look, this is definitely something you should invest in because it makes sense and everybody else is doing it, but because you're able to take in all the information about an opportunity, who's running the deal, who's sourcing the deal, how it will be managed, where the deal is, what's happening in that neighborhood, does the deal make sense, and start to discern a whole lot of kind of information about why this stacks up as a great deal. And essentially, what you're looking for as an investor is a way to stack the odds in your favor. So from my perspective, when you can see, feel, and touch deals, it will transform your experience of stacking the odds in your favor because your confidence around doing deals will be very, very high. I think there's a tendency for a lot of investors to hope and pray that things go the way they want them to go. And, what we want to do is, as investors, is evolve from hoping and praying to absolute, just total sleep at night confidence that you know exactly what you're doing and you have done as much as you possibly can to stack the odds in your favor. So that's pretty much where I wanted to leave it today. I'm taking these clients to New York because I want them to level up. I want them to transform their experience of being an investor who generates strong, predictable, passive income without having to run any of the deals, without having to source any of the deals, but through association with a network of investors who are killer, who are A grade in terms of their ethics, their transparency, and how they talk and relate to clients. So anyway, guys, take care of yourselves and look forward to catching you on the next episode.
You've been listening to the Alternative Investing Podcast. If you're feeling frustrated that despite doing everything right in the property investing playbook and you're no closer to financial freedom, then head on over to incosiwealth.com to learn more about how you can use alternative investments to catapult your investing income and blend strategies to shave decades off your timeline to financial freedom. See you on the next episode.